In the autumn of 1888, a dark shadow fell over the foggy, gaslit streets of London's East End. A killer, whose name would become synonymous with terror, began a reign of fear that has captivated and horrified the world for over a century. This is the story of Jack the Ripper. Our tale begins in Whitechapel, a district teeming with poverty, desperation, and crime. The cobbled streets were a maze of narrow alleyways and overcrowded lodging houses. For many women, with no other means of survival, life on the streets was a harsh reality. It was in this grim setting that the Ripper found his victims. The first murder officially attributed to the Ripper, known as one of the Canonical Five, was Mary Ann Nichols. On August 31, 1888, her body was discovered in Bucks Row. The brutality of the attack shocked even the hardened residents of Whitechapel, but this was only the beginning. The killer was just getting started. Just over a week later, on September 8th, the body of Annie Chapman was found in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street. The ferocity of the attack had escalated. The killer had not only murdered her, but had also taken some of her internal organs. This gruesome detail sent a wave of panic through London. The press, sensing a sensational story, dubbed the unknown assailant Leather Apron, a local figure who was quickly arrested but later cleared. The name Jack the Ripper itself came from a letter, now famously known as the Dear Boss letter. It was sent to the Central News Agency on September 27. The letter, written in red ink, taunted the police, and was signed, "Yours truly, Jack the Ripper." The name was catchy, menacing, and it stuck. Newspapers printed it, and the public's fascination with the killer grew into a national obsession. Whether the letter was a genuine taunt from the killer or a cruel hoax by a journalist remains a debate to this day. Just 3 days after the letter was postmarked, the Ripper struck again, this time with a terrifying double murder. In the early hours of September 30th, a night that would become known as the Double Event, 2 women were killed within an hour of each other. First, Elizabeth Stride was found in Dutfield's yard. It's believed the killer may have been interrupted during this attack, as her injuries were less severe than the others, but he wasn't finished. Less than an hour later, and only a short walk away, the body of Catherine Eddowes was discovered in Mitre Square. This murder was particularly horrific. The mutilations were extensive, and a kidney had been removed. A portion of this kidney was later mailed to George Lusk, the head of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, a group of local citizens who had banded together to patrol the streets. This package, known as the From Hell letter, was accompanied by a note that read, "From Hell. I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you, t'other piece I fried and ate. It was very nice." This chilling message, with its spelling errors and cannibalistic claim, cemented the Ripper's reputation as a monster. The police were in a frenzy. Scotland Yard was under immense pressure to catch the killer. Detectives like Frederick Aberlin led one of the biggest manhunts in history. They interviewed thousands of people, investigated hundreds of suspects, and followed countless leads. They tried new techniques, like crime scene photography, and even had bloodhounds ready to track the killer's scent, though the plan ultimately failed. Despite their efforts, the streets of Whitechapel remained a hunting ground. The final canonical victim, Mary Jane Kelly, was murdered on November 9, 1888. This was the most gruesome murder of all. Kelly was killed indoors, in her small room at 13 Miller's Court. This gave the killer ample time to carry out his horrific work. The scene that greeted the police was something out of a nightmare. The mutilation was so extreme that she was barely recognizable. And then, as suddenly as he had appeared, Jack the Ripper vanished. The murders stopped. The letters ceased. The fog of fear over Whitechapel slowly began to lift. But the mystery remained. Who was he? Why did he stop? Over the past 130 years, the question of Jack the Ripper's identity has become the ultimate whodunit. The list of suspects is long and varied, featuring everyone from doctors and butchers to barristers and even members of the royal family. Let's look at a few of the most prominent ones. One of the top suspects for many Ripperologists is Montague John Druitt. A barrister and schoolteacher, Druitt's body was found in the River Thames in December 1888, shortly after the last murder. His own family suspected he was the killer, and his disappearance coincided with the end of the murder spree. The high-ranking policeman Melville Macnaghten, in a private memo written years later, named Druitt as his preferred suspect. Another compelling candidate is Aaron Kosminski, a Polish-Jewish immigrant who worked as a hairdresser in Whitechapel. Kosminski suffered from severe mental illness and had a known hatred of women. He was committed to an asylum in 1891 and died there. Chief Constable Macnaghten also listed Kosminski as a suspect, noting he was identified by a witness but there wasn't enough evidence to convict. In recent years, controversial DNA evidence from a shawl supposedly found near Catherine Eddowes' body has been linked to Kosminski, but the validity of this evidence is hotly debated by experts. Then there's Suren Kalasowski, also known as George Chapman. He was another Polish immigrant who lived in Whitechapel during the murders. Chapman was a convicted poisoner, executed in 1903 for murdering 3 of his wives. Inspector Aberline, one of the lead investigators on the Ripper case, reportedly said, "You've got Jack the Ripper at last." After Chapman's conviction, however, his method of killing poison was vastly different from the Ripper's brutal knife attacks. Other suspects range from the plausible to the outright bizarre. There's Michael Ostrog, a Russian con man and thief with a history of being institutionalized. There's Dr. Francis Tumblety, an American quack doctor who was arrested in London at the time for unrelated offenses and fled the country. He was known to have a collection of anatomical specimens. Some theories even point to painter Walter Siebert, who had a morbid fascination with the murders and created paintings based on them. One author even proposed he was an accomplice, or that he was covering for the true killer, who he claimed was a royal prince. The list goes on, with dozens of names proposed and countless books written, each presenting its own definitive solution, but the truth is, we don't know. Every theory has its holes. Every piece of evidence its counterargument. The lack of a definitive answer is precisely what makes the case so enduring. Jack the Ripper was more than just a serial killer. He became a cultural phenomenon. He was arguably the first modern media-fueled celebrity killer. The press coverage created a legend, a boogeyman lurking in the shadows. The case exposed the shocking poverty of London's East End to the wider world and even led to social reforms. Today, the story of Jack the Ripper continues to fascinate us. It's a dark and compelling puzzle that has spawned movies, books, TV shows, and a whole tourism industry in London. We are drawn to the mystery, to the glimpse into a Victorian world that was both refined and brutal. The case represents a moment when society was forced to confront the darkness that could exist just beneath its surface. The identity of the man who called himself Jack the Ripper was never discovered. He remains a ghost, a name whispered in the dark, a chilling reminder of an unsolved mystery that has haunted London and the world for generations. His true face is lost to history, forever concealed by the London fog. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. If you found this as fascinating as I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the dark side of history. Let me know in the comments who you think the Ripper was. See you next time.